Welcome to another fabulous episode of System 238. For this build, got started by picking some frames and cutting a Nerf gun in half with this very fabulous edit there. Sanding the Nerf gun was pretty simple, just whenever you're using plastic weld, please use a respirator. It does create fumes, but I used it to reattach these two pieces. The armature was made out of some, wire that I twisted together using a drill and then bent into shape. So, today I'm basically building a robot that is called a Grazzer. They are essentially farmhands in System 238. Those wires, I didn't add any clips of me using them because I didn't end up using any electronics for this build. I just couldn't get a system for what I had planned for it set up, so anyways, the legs were made from popsicle sticks and some Gundam pieces, as well as some acrylic rods for the pistons. And this one I used a Gundam hand for the joint. I did the same with the other leg. And I did a quick little mini dry fit with all of the cows that I had made off camera. I just made their horns with some thinner wire. I added some armor plating using some clothespins as well as some more popsicle sticks. And then I repeated the same process with the back leg. I also added some more armor plating on the back to kind of add a little bit of some smoothness using some thinly corrugated cardboard. I wasn't liking the wood texture, so I used from all of these pieces, so I used some Mr. White putty to fill up all of the gaps. And then I made some more armor plating, this time with a to-go container. And I kind of liked how it looked. In the end, it looked like that. It covered where the wires had gone. I made some hands using a Gundam claw and some tape, which is very well out of focus there. Here we go, there's a shot where it's in focus. But that was just to fill the space. And then I drilled some holes in the Nerf gun and added them in place. This build was for a contest, so I had to make it look like the Grazzer was interacting with the cows. So my original plan for that was to have them eating some hay that was strapped to the side of the legs. And now we're on to the base. The base was simply made out of some foam along with that picture frame you see there. I wanted to have a river in there, so I used a hot wire to kind of carve this little valley looking thing in the center, which I will eventually fill with resin, which is mildly horrifying. Here I'm just trying to organize everything so that way the Grazzer fits before I seal everything in place. And after I glued the foam down, I sealed the gaps with some UV resin. Be careful when you're using this, it can damage your eyes. And then I added a little bit more adjusting with that hot wire. And here's a little bridge I made out of some more popsicle sticks. Here the piece just kind of falls off there, so I took it off. And there's the final part of this base so far, just adding that, and here's the first little dry fit of everything together. I think it looks pretty cute. I decided to put those hay bales on the top of the Grazzer instead. I just liked the way it looked more. And I put all the cows on the top of these medicine bottle caps for painting later, which is the next step. And so I got the base all primed, and then I covered the riverbed with some glue and then dirt to make the riverbed. I dry brushed the edges to give it some more rocky texture, and then it was on to spray painting, I was trying to paint the edges blue here, but it was a little bit too dark, so I dry brushed once more that white, and now you can see those blue colors start to shine a little bit more. So the Grazzer is a farmhand. This specific one is designed for monitoring and defending cattle of this ranch. However, they are capable of doing far more depending on how their owners modify them. I coated the base once more in some glue, and then I added some dirt again because I like dirt. I took these little aquarium plants and then gave them a quick airbrush paint coat, and then moved them to the center of the river for some river plants. I didn't add any fish though, looking back, I wish I had. And here we got some rivets because I 100% forgot to add those before I spray painted the thing. And here's some very watered down glue for the static grass. And it was on to trying to get resin to work. I've never worked with resin, but I've seen plenty of people do it. So I sealed the edges with these acrylic sheets that I had lying around because I just have a lot, and then sealed the edges and cracks with some resin. And then it was time to mix the resin. This was mildly terrifying. I've never worked with this much resin before, and definitely not 2-part resin. But as long as it didn't leak, it would be fine, which it did leak. Terrifying, so I ended up putting it into a bin and leaving it in the garage and hoping it just kind of worked. I popped all the bubbles with a retouch, but now we're just going to paint some cows. We painted them brown with a light brown airbrush, and then the horns are purple because I decided they should be that color, and I really liked that. It was time to continue painting this thing, which was just quick silver dry brush and then dabbling some red paint everywhere because I like the way red and green will go together. Not necessarily my favorite paint job ever. I'm still kind of learning the ratios for everything. I think I might be about time to invest in some actual modeling paints instead of just acrylic. And then I painted the hay bales yellow, and this piece silver, and then the little wires holding them down are painted red because I like the color red. And luckily for me, the resin did work out quite well. This is kind of a first. Again, I've never worked with resin before in this amount, and it was honestly scary, but luckily it worked pretty well, minus a little leak that happened. I was able to fix that, no problem. I used some UV resin that I painted on sort of, to add a ripply effect to the water so it wasn't super stagnant, because stagnant water is gross. Again, make sure you're careful with your eyes whenever you're using that. Here's me dry brushing on that light brown for the bridge before attaching it in place. And then I put the cows on. I did rearrange the cows a little bit before I finally glued them in place, but then I painted the base black for that nice sleek look on the sides. Put the Grazzer in its position as soon as I found the holes, which definitely took a little bit. And then it was on to the glamour shots. Anyways, here's this song coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It took quite a while. I'm sorry it took so long for this build to get out. I had some family stuff going on, so that's why it's been so long since I've posted a long form video. But again, thank you for watching. I really liked this build, and I would love to work with resin more often. And if you would like to see that, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next edition of System 238.